What's up, everyone? This is Nolan Rodman. I'm here, your host, Rodman's TV. This is episode 2, and we're going to do today a little tutorial on how to taste wine. So I brought down one of my favorite wines. This is the Gran Reserva Rioja 2011, and I'm just going to talk a little bit today about how I go through tasting wine, and maybe if you're learning how to taste wine, or if you want to learn more about wine, how to go about tasting it properly. So you'll notice a lot of times when you go out to a restaurant or something like that, and they'll pour you a little bit of a taste in your glass before they pour you a full glass, and they'll kind of let you analyze the cork. So a lot of people will look at the cork and they'll see this cork, for instance, it doesn't have anything running up it. There's no signs that there was air let in or anything like that. So we'll look at the cork and we'll just notice that there's no wine staining down the side. There's no kind of brown or mildewy stuff going on with the cork. So the cork looks good. A lot of times they'll give you the cork in a restaurant to inspect, and I would inspect this cork and say that there's nothing wrong with it, and likely that there's not going to be anything wrong with the wine based on the cork, but that's not always the case. So I'll pour myself a little taste here, and the first thing I always do is you're just going to look at the color of the wine first. And a lot of times you'll see people go immediately in to smell it, and that is fine. If you want to smell the wine and make sure that it doesn't have any off flavors to it, if it doesn't smell like vinegar or anything like that, that can be a good way to start. But I like to start just by looking at the wine here, and I'm going to look down the center of the glass, and I'm going to kind of tilt the wine out here and look at the color, and you can start to see if there's anything going on with the age and the color of the wine. So if the wine is sort of consistent in its color, might not be showing signs of rim variation or age. If it's got this one kind of purple hue to it all the way, if you start to see sort of multiple colors as the wine sits at the end of the glass there, you might start to think this wine is a little bit older or has seen some aging in a barrel, etc. So after inspecting the wine here, another thing to look at is when you look straight down the glass of the wine, you'll notice the color of the wine, and if you can see through and understand that the wine is maybe a thinner skinned grape, red varietal, for example, then you'll maybe start to think, okay, this wine isn't as heavy as, say, if I can't see down straight through the rim, and that might tell me that this wine is a thinner skinned grape versus a thicker skinned grape. So depending on the color and the hue within the glass, obviously this is for red wine. For white wine, the colors are going to vary. There might be a pale and very light golden straw color versus more of an amber deep gold color. So these are good indications to tell you things about the wine just off the sight, which is really important. And once you start tasting a lot of wine, you'll start to realize sort of the difference between purple, between garnet, between an amber color, etc. So I'll look at this wine and I'll say, this wine looks like a thick-skinned grape wine. I can't really see all the way through it. Okay, so next up, we're going to swirl the wine, and we're going to take a sniff of the wine. And before we smell the wine, we always want to swirl it. So if you're a pro swirler, you can swirl the wine in your hand. If you want a little bit of help from the table, always good to swirl it on the table. Also, swirling makes you look like a pro, so definitely want to swirl the wine before sniffing it. This is going to release a lot of the esters too that are coming out of the wine itself. So as we smell this wine, we're going to notice a lot of fruit character coming out, and we're always looking for what kind of fruit character. Is it red fruit character? Is it black fruit character? Is there wood character? Is there spices? Is there sort of minerality coming through the nose? Sometimes there's a smoky element to it because the barrels are charred more than others. So we're looking for all of these different differentiating characters that are going to lead us to a conclusion about this wine. So this wine, for instance, as I smell it, I get a lot of characteristics of wood. I get a lot of characteristics of like dried out fruits, things that are telling me that this wine has seen age. This wine has been fermented in oak for maybe a long time. And the fruit character is a little bit more dried out. It gives me a little bit more of a leathery characteristic than sort of a fresh, jammy fruit characteristic. And that's gonna lead me down a road of thinking that this wine has age as well. So then we're gonna go ahead and taste the wine. When I taste this wine right off the palate, we're looking for whether this wine is a dry wine or whether it's a sweet wine. And I would say most of the time we're drinking dry wines, and if there's a continued sweetness on the wine, that will be either a dry or off dry, sweet or very sweet wine. But normally we're drinking mostly just dry wines that we get at the store. So when drinking red wine, we're looking for tannin structure in the wine. And that's sort of the feeling that's going to dry out the places in your mouth. And it's really important when you're tasting wine, you're swirling the wine about your whole palate. The other thing we're looking for is the alcohol content in the wine and also the acidity in the wine. So to talk about acidity, imagine if you were to eat something really sour and you kind of get that puckering sensation in your palate. So that's going to kind of give you the indication of whether the wine has a lot of acid. And sometimes it's difficult to decipher the acid because there might be a lot of fruit complementing the acid, and those two things can counteract each other. So the best way to understand is just to continue tasting more wine, obviously. And a really great way to try acidic wines is to try wines from regions that are really cool climate. And for instance, German wines or Alsatian wines, these wines are really high in acid because they're not getting a lot of ripening during the growth cycle, and that's not going to give the wines a lot of fruit character. It's going to give it more acid character, and that's a good indication of when a wine is grown in a cooler climate, when it has more acid. So when I taste this wine too, we're looking for the body and the structure of the wine. So is it engulfing my whole mouth? Does it feel like I'm chewing something? Is it really silky smooth? What types of flavors am I getting? Is it hitting me in the face with all of these different kind of characteristics, etc.? So as I taste this wine, for example, I get a lot of dried fruit, things like fig and dark plum characteristics, blackberry, etc. This wine to me doesn't taste like fresh fruit that I just picked. It tastes like fruit that's been left out for maybe days, etc. And then I also get a lot of characteristics of spice and almost like a smoky characteristic, some wood, and I think all of that, when it's individually put, sounds like a lot of different things, but the way that this wine has integrated all of it has done a beautiful job. So this wine to me is tasting really good, and all of those flavor characteristics are playing really nicely together. It's not unbalanced in one direction or another. And that's a very important thing to notice when you're tasting wine. Is it too far in the fruity sector? Is it too much acid that it's overwhelming your palate, etc.? So when you're tasting, you're looking at these different characteristics. Is it too much of one thing, or is it too little of a one thing, or are they complementing and working in harmony together? So that's another great thing to look at. So that is, in short, how I taste wine. I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that you'll join me tasting wine in the future. Cheers.